Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are diving headfirst into a story that absolutely shatters your standard middle grade fantasy formula. We're talking about The Western Weird by John Coley. And honestly, if you think you know exactly what to expect from a story about a kid discovering magical powers, you might want to brace yourself, because this book is going to turn every single one of those expectations completely upside down. The big question we're tackling today is pretty simple. How is this story fundamentally different from literally every other middle grade fantasy adventure sitting on the shelf? To figure that out, I want you to picture the typical fantasy setup for a second. You know the exact one I'm talking about, right? An orphan, usually stuck in some kind of pseudo-medieval European village, or maybe they're hidden away in modern London, and boom, they suddenly discover they're a wizard or a chosen one, and off they go to a sparkly magical boarding school. Well, take that entire concept, crumple it up, and throw it straight out the window. We are pivoting immediately to the downright bizarre reality of our protagonist, Samoria. It is a seriously stark contrast. Instead of those pristine, sparkly castles, clean magic wands, and flowing robes, we are dropped right into the grit of 19th century pioneer Arizona, specifically the rugged rim country. There are no wands here. No owls are swooping in to drop off acceptance letters. It's just pioneer cabins, scrub brush, double-barreled shotguns, and grueling farm chores. And Samoria has to navigate all of this while trying desperately to hide the fact that her skin completely repels dirt and water. Section 1. Pioneers over Princes, a new kind of fantasy family. Let's look at the foundation of this world. You know that classic abusive adoptive parent trope, right? It's so common in fantasy it's practically a cliché at this point. Wicked stepmothers or cruel relatives making the hero sleep in a cupboard under the stairs. But Coley totally flips the script. Samoria was found as an infant and raised by these tough pioneer settlers, Shannon and Edward. And the thing is, they are deeply supportive. Even with her strange, water-repellent skin, they never ever treat her like a burden. They genuinely love her, living by Edward's absolute core teaching. Family is everything. And having that kind of family support changes everything when a crisis hits. At one point, Samoria sneaks out to face down a monstrous kidnapper all by herself. Her younger brother Abe catches her in the barn. Now, in a standard story, this is the part where the little brother tattles or selfishly demands to tag along and gets in the way. But Abe, he realizes she's literally the only one who can do this. So he hands her their late father's freshly sharpened knife and insists she take the family shotgun. He doesn't hold her back at all. He practically arms her for war. Section 2. Prolifics, Weirds, and Myths. Rebuilding the lore. Okay, so what exactly are we dealing with out in the desert? Early on, Samoria meets this ancient dying giant who's just hiding out in a cave, and he explains the hidden rules of this world. He tells her about prolifics. These are towering humans with ancient lineages that grant them immense size, strength, and really specialized magic. The giant himself is a prolific. So is the story's main villain, Hamblin, who can literally enrapture people with his flute. But the catch is, while their ancient blood gives them a massive edge, they are still fundamentally mortal. But here is the massive twist. Samoria, she actually isn't a prolific. The giant looks at her little baby bracelet, it has the letters VVN on it, and he realizes she is a weird. And in this universe, the word weird refers to its original old-school meaning, someone tied to the supernatural and to fate. Samoria carries the direct, elemental lineage of her mother, Vivian. And who is Vivian? She's the Lady of the Lake from Arthurian legend. So Samoria isn't just some strong human, she is a being with direct, elemental lineage and a deep, raw power over water. So we have this wildly eclectic, almost crazy mix of mythologies happening. Think about this. The villain Hamblin, he's actually the Pied Piper. That dying giant is Tom Thumb. There are even mentions of a super crabby storm god, literally Zeus, striking people down with thunderbolts right in the middle of the Arizona desert. You've got German fairy tales, English folklore, Arthurian legends, and Greek gods all sharing the exact same dusty pioneer terrain. And somehow, it feels completely seamless. And the tone? The tone is what really makes all of this work perfectly. Because when Hamblin finally realizes exactly who Samoria is during their big confrontation, he doesn't launch into some high fantasy Shakespearean monologue. No, he just looks at her and says, "Well, I do believe old Vivian slung a heifer." It's brilliant. You have these ancient mythical beings who have been kicking around for centuries, and they are speaking in gritty Western pioneer dialects. It grounds all that lofty mythology right in the dirt. Which brings us to Section 3, Shotguns and Water Magic, an atypical climax.
The stakes for this climax are through the roof, and let me tell you, there are zero polite wand-waving duels happening here. To stop the Piper from marching all these entranced children off a cliff, Samoria just interrupts the sacrifice with a point-blank shotgun blast to his chest. But because he's a prolific, he survives it, bashes her in the face with her own shotgun, and she actively drowns in a freezing lake. It's intense. Hours later, though, she resurrects. She's breathing the water, fully realizing her power as a water weird, and she commands a horde of undead, drowned rats to drag him away.
Just think about how middle-grade fantasy usually handles a final battle. It's normally super clean, right? Sparkly spells, colored lights deflecting off magical shields. Kali completely subverts that expectation with this incredibly visceral, elemental survival sequence. The hero literally gets her head bashed in, sinks to the bottom of a lake, and weaponizes dead animals. It's a brutal, messy fight that relies entirely on pioneer grit and raw nature rather than memorized, clean incantations.
And this intensely gritty victory matters so much. 100. To put that in perspective, that is roughly the number of mesmerized kids Samoria saves from being marched right off the rim by the Pied Piper's magical music. By finally accepting her weirdness and by fully embracing the terrifying raw power of her elemental lineage, she prevents a massive tragedy and returns those children to their grieving families.
Section 4. Redefining the genre. The birth of the Western weird.
So pulling all of this together, it's pretty clear how the Western weird carves out a wholly unique space for itself. It trades those cruel step-parents for supportive siblings who hand out shotguns. It swaps European castles for the dusty Arizona rim country. It takes Arthurian lore and Greek myth and just drops them directly into the Wild West. Basically, it respects its audience enough to get delightfully dark and visceral, completely sidestepping the worn-out, predictable path of the typical Chosen One narrative.
So I want to leave you with this thought. By breaking literally all the rules, did the Western weird just invent the ultimate American fairy tale? When you mix the raw, unflinching survivalism of pioneer life with the ancient elemental power of classic mythology, you get something incredibly special. I'd argue that this gritty, shotgun-wielding, water-breathing adventure is exactly the kind of fresh take the fantasy genre desperately needs right now. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the tropes.